Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the ARU Startup Podcast. My name is Omkar Singh, and today we are joined by amazing guest speakers, Craig and Shane. They are the founders of Crimsham Farm CIC, a community farming project. And they're also the recent recipient of the Business Community Impact Award by X-Forces Enterprise. In this episode, we are going to learn more about their entrepreneurial journey and how they started the business. Welcome, Shane and Craig. Thank you so much for joining us. We are delighted to have you on the ARU Startup Podcast.
Cool. Nice to be here, mate.
Thank you. You have been the recent recipient of a Business Community Impact Award. Before we ask questions about your business and how you started, I think my first question is about yourself, who you are, what background you come from, and how did you both find yourself into this journey together?
So my name's Shane Glasswell. I'm 36. My background is primarily ex-military. Served in the infantry as a sniper for 7 years, and then worked in the Middle East for the US government for a period of time. Then went into business myself, hotels, restaurants, cocktail bars, HMOs, that sort of thing. I'll let Craig introduce himself, and then we can go into the how we met. I suppose would be the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I'm Craig Quigley. I had a short career in the military back in the 80s. I'm 54 now. And my career experience has been in the health and social care sector. And that's primarily the reason why we met, really. And quite a chance meeting it, that, wasn't it?
It was.
To be fair. Shane was helping out not a CIC in the community with finance and taxation. And it was in the wake of one of Shane's colleagues from the military who committed suicide. And he was looking for somebody with mental health experience to help with veterans, with their post-traumatic stress disorder and poor mental health. Chance meeting in a shop. I was looking for a farm for my son who has autism and was unable to get employment because of his autism in farming and agriculture. And tongue in cheek, I said to him, it's like, well, if you find a farm, I'll head up your mental health project. And 10 minutes later, he came out with a cup of tea and said, come on, then we'll go and drive up and have a look at this farm my friend of mine's got.
He thought I was joking. Definitely wasn't.
And it was as quick as that 10-minute meeting. I'd never met the man in my life, We went up to the farm, met an ex-veteran who was also a local landowner, explained to him what my son wanted to do with his community farming project. Shane explained what he wanted to do for veteran services within the town and in the county. And he handed us the keys to 4.2 acres, which we now know as Crimsham Farm. And that was how we started. £410 and 10 pigs, and 5 years later, and a pandemic to boot. And this is where we find ourselves, being nominated and, winning the 2023 X-Forces Soldiering On Awards for Community Impact.
That's brilliant. That's very inspiring story. I was just about to ask what inspired to go into this business, and I think it's about the personal story you have encountered, and it just went on to start your own firm. But again, congratulations on the awards that you have bagged recently. So you said you have a background in business. Is that one of the reasons that helped you in scaling this venture?
To a certain degree, yes. I'd say scaling the venture more is to do with our ambition and the way we work and the way we do things, because obviously we do a lot of work with the local authority, a lot of work with the government. We've got the ability between us to sell an idea really well, and to also then realise that if we're doing something that we don't fully understand, we need to then bring in industry professionals to help. So scaling it was just a case of realising where those hurdles were and employing the correct people to then help us expand it and do so safely and successfully.
And how did you manage your COVID pandemic? Did it impact you guys as well?
COVID made our business. If it were not lockdown, we would not be where we are now. So we deal primarily with the negative impact of the lockdown in regards to social, emotional, mental health in children. So coming out of the pandemic, there was a lot of requirement for services like ours, outdoors, animal, engaging people in stuff outside of the classroom. During the pandemic, we capitalised on the grants and funding that were made available to businesses to build certain aspects, so offices, to get additional livestock in. We also set up a community food delivery project. We delivered nearly £500,000 worth of food through the pandemic, which then also got our name out there as being pro-community. So coming out of the pandemic, our reputation was absolutely bomb-proof. We were the name in the local area for helping people, which really did improve the business no end.
Brilliant. I think so. The COVID has impacted your business, but positive way.
Yes.
Positively. Yeah, that's great. How was your post-COVID work looked like, your business? Did it boost up at immediately, or was it a gradual process?
It was really slow, wasn't it? Because we didn't actually have a lot. You know, Shane was working full time. I was still working full time in my own social care business. So we were in our spare time helping my son develop the farm site with a couple of veteran volunteers. And when I say the site was derelict, it was bramble, 4.2 acres of virtual bramble. You know, there was nothing there. You couldn't even see the buildings. And we just spent every spare minute that we had over the first summer just clearing and getting ready. And then we got our first animals in, and it just went from there. And then we started getting home educators coming down, various different community groups using it, but it was very, very slow. And when we decided, well, actually, it's really, really viable, this model that we're working, once it's getting a good community response, that was when we got notification 2 days before the first national lockdown that the dignitaries that were coming to help to open our site and launch it, you know, the press launch and everything. We got the phone call on the Tuesday and we went into lockdown on the Thursday. And by Monday morning, Shane had set up a distribution line with local wholesalers for ambient goods, fresh produce, and we started delivering the food delivery service. We were shut down before we were open, really, because of, you know, the rules and regulations.
Yeah. But no, the scale up coming out of the pandemic, that's where it really took off. We took our first few students, proved that it worked, and before we knew what was happening, we had the local education authority knocking on the door. We had almost every school in the county knocking on the door. Within 12 months of coming out of the last lockdown, we had 3 sites up and running, all different areas over the county, up in Horsham, over Brighton Way. It exploded. Because of that, we've now condensed back to a single location and perfected what we've done. You know, you're talking, we went from a few £1,000s a month to now nearly £250,000 a month turnover as a community project. It's unheard of.
Yeah, brilliant. So you mentioned about you had 3 different locations you were operating in, and now condensed back into one.
Yep.
Was there a strategy behind to do it that way? Because you mentioned that your revenue have boosted up.
The strategy was that we wanted to create a perfect template. So the other locations that we had were working, but they weren't working as well as the first one that we had. So the idea was to draw it all back in again. We were still providing services to these areas of the county, but we established pupil transport to bring our customers to us instead of setting up sites near them.
Yeah.
So we can perfect this one location as a template, which then as a business model, we can pick up and transfer to other areas. So we didn't have a perfect business template, and that's what we needed to do. Get the first one right and then make it even more scalable from there.
I'll definitely come back on the future aspirations you have got, because people usually expand their units and you have condensed it to one. So I'll come back on that one later, because Craig, you mentioned about social impact that you have caused during the COVID pandemic, and how you have been helping in the local region. Is there any particular success story you have come across and the impact that has made in the local region, in the schools, that you want to share?
I think the main thing that we've managed to achieve is that, because going through the pandemic and then coming out after first lockdown, when we got involved with the local authority, they quoted a 183% increase in the negative impacts of social, emotional, mental health caused through the pandemic. So by us taking those children with special educational needs and providing them with somewhere, and then seeing them come out of that poor level of mental health, that was a significant sort of a key stage in what we were looking at planning, you know. And then, you know, we started picking up on things like safeguarding children, and we discovered that within the industry we were working with, you could actually, with just liability insurance and an enhanced disclosure from the disclosure and barring service, you could actually look after anybody's child. And that caused me, from an industry background, real concern. So I put Shane to task on it, and we came up with this robust plan a safeguarding policy that we could actually put to the local authority, and then they started bringing in other organisations that provide what's known as alternative provision in education, and we sort of raised the bar, if you like, because you can't take that level of risk with children and vulnerable adults. And then also we had the veteran side of it as well, the impact on that. We were using veterans during the lockdown with the food distribution services that we were providing, and that was having a significant impact on their mental well-being, i.e. raising it and bringing them out of poor mental health. And that again was another real key aspect for us, that what we're doing actually works. The way that soldiers, ex-military, their training is to help. You serve, that's what you sign up to do, and you can translate that to the local community for people who they would deem more vulnerable than themselves, i.e. in this case it was children, and children with special educational needs. So they were two real significant areas for us, which just highlighted the need, within our own county, if you like, of people with that level of poor mental health, lack of education provision due to, diagnoses like neurodiversity, autism, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Shane, so coming to you on the same question, where do you see this, what impact it has created, particularly in schools, among the students and in the local region?
The biggest one for us is the success rate that we've had that proves that what we do is working. And that is that we've got a 100% success rate of reintegrating any child placed with us back into education or further education. We haven't failed a single one. So seeing a child that comes to us at 5 years old, completely non-verbal, non-communicative, just wants to dig holes and look for diamonds, which is a prime example, one that we've got, who now will talk, has staff that he'll talk to, engages with other kids. It's seeing that change. It's the change from the quiet little kid that turns up to the loud kid with an education that leaves, who without us wouldn't have got it. And the impact in the local area, I mean, testament to the fact we're sat in the middle of it. We've opened a coffee shop on the high street as a means to generate a charitable revenue without shaking a bucket, and every day we're busy. People are always coming in asking for the story. There isn't anyone you meet in the local area who doesn't know about us and what we do. And that speaks volumes. We don't have to tell people what we do. They come to us and they know. They've heard about us. They know the story. They know how we deliver.
Yeah. So do you work in a different projects as well, or you're dedicated full time on this venture?
We've got Crimsham Farm CIC, which now works with, I'd say, about 500 people per week, employs nearly 100 staff, and we're just moving now. So myself and Craig have taken a step back because we're moving into children's social care. We're going to start setting up a series of children's homes. This forms, again, part of the other bit with drawing the business in to perfect the template. As a result of doing that, we've now been invited into these other areas. We've got children's social care that we're working on, veterans mental health spearhead projects with the NHS that we're working on. We're going into adult learning. We're moving into adult day services. So we're stepping back from the farm now. We've transferred the ethos into a management team. They're now running that business. We're now expanding into other areas.
Yeah, and when you say that students who come across, who have the different educational needs and they struggle initially, and once they have completed their, let's say, the course or a club with the farm, and they see a significant development in their education, how does the process at the farm look like? What magic it creates in them?
There isn't magic. We operate in a way that we call a needs led. So we take every individual child case by case. We look at what they need and we provide it. There is no one-stop shop or cure to fix them. It's looking at every individual case and then building a plan around that child to best meet their needs and deliver on their outcomes, which we then transfer to the staff to implement. Constant review periods. The whole thing has to be so fluid. Absolutely fluid. It changes day by day by day. But if we meet the needs every single day, ultimately we achieve the outcomes and the children succeed.
Yeah, and how much time usually it takes for them to transform?
It takes as long as it takes.
Case by case basis.
There is no fixed time frame. We were asked to do only a term. We've had kids we've been working with for 2 to 3 years who now will move on to further education, so college, from us, because we've succeeded that well that they don't feel they should be fighting for a place elsewhere, they're going to leave them with us, allow us to run the course, get them what they need, and then transition them into further education. Ultimately, a lot of them end up coming back and working for us. So we're quite big on getting the kids that have been through to come back again, because they can relate more easily to the students that are coming in.
So is there any particular age range for students to join your clubs, or is it open to everybody? Also the adults who are in higher education, they can come along and transform into
25 years of age. So those with specialist educational need, they have a plan under government legislation called an education and healthcare plan, which is linked in with all their social care, and that runs from point of diagnosis, which is generally around 3 to 4 years of age. We take them at 5 through to 25. Predominantly, we have an age range of around 5 to 16, and then those few apprentices that Shane mentioned about, training and then going to college, getting a qualification, and then coming back to us. We have several of those as well, on our staffing team and currently working at the setting.
So we obviously allow and run and operate and take into account work experience students, university placements, adults with learning difficulties that want to volunteer or come on to the farm. We've got several groups of young adults that assume control of areas, and that's their week by week project. We've got this thing where we don't actually say no to anyone. If someone wants to come and use the site, they're welcome to. They what they want to do and how they want to do it, and we let them do it. We've got old boys that come down. They've got allotment plots that they oversee and manage because it gets them their time outdoors. But in turn, they work with the kids, transfer their skills to them. It's that there is no one that we've said no to thus far.
Yeah. And then let's talk about the animals at the farm. So how I've seen some pictures. They look brilliant. They look cute. Do you have any plans for expanding them or bringing more into it?
Yeah, we've got a plan for Sicilian donkeys. We need some miniature donkeys on the farm. We're not allowed equine, but these are quite small. Probably some more poultry, some more pygmy goats, but that will be the extent of it. I think we've got enough at the moment to do what we need to do. And whilst it is quite heavily focused towards the animals, we've also got to bear in mind the education. We run forest schools, bushcraft camps. The animals are one part of a huge network of different activities that we run.
When you said that you give a very personalized care to someone who joins to improve their mental health, so how much time commitment or the team's commitment is required on each person? Do you have got a big group of volunteers helping you, or how is it operating?
Our paid staff, we don't employ volunteers. We stick to employed staff for that. So we've got 65 dedicated staff working with the students one-to-one. So every child will have a personal mentor that they select. So they'll find the adult they get on best with. That's who they work with. The usual sessions, as per local authority guidelines, it's 4 hours a day, 16 hours a week. That's the time that we get.
Yeah. Yep. And Craig, you were saying something.
No, it was just reiterating that it's that child-focused approach based around the young person. Maximum, like Shane said, 16 hours. It's
yeah.
And when for a term, plus.
Yeah. So when you started this form, what challenges you have encountered majorly, and how did you approach?
It was a totally new business model. Out of the three of us that started it, myself, Shane, myself, and Connor, my son, he was the only one that actually had real sort of animal experience. So he'd done the courses and stuff like that. We knew how to keep poultry and chickens and that sort of thing, but pure breed saddleback pigs, that was just a new one for us. So getting used to that. Having been in an office, running a social care business, labour. Yeah, that was a shock to my system, to say the least. 10 hours a day, blood, sweat and tears and all of that sort of stuff, really, heavy duty farm work. That was quite exhausting, wasn't it, at times?
The hardest one was getting our heads around making the local education authority understand how we worked and why it was a benefit to them. Had quite a few issues when we first started in relation to safeguarding, because we don't work how schools work. We're very matter of fact with things, whereas I don't want to say airy fairy, but it's a lot more docile way of dealing with things. We tend to take problems and situations head on. So getting around that was a major
things like refusal to follow instruction from a teacher at school will have a child excluded from the system. Use of exotic language, shall we call it, and also what I'd call exotic communication, i.e. violence, aggression towards teaching staff, that would generally get a child excluded from a mainstream setting. You've got to be able to see through all that. The reason the child is acting like that is because they've got a trauma-informed background or education. There are barriers to learning that they can't allow themselves to learn or to engage because of the phobias or fears or things mentally that are blocking them from achieving and engaging properly. And we're quite matter of fact about that. It's like, well, you know, that's okay if you want to, you know, swear at us and stuff. That's great, you know, but you're not going to get kicked out for that.
And hit us over the head with blocks of concrete.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some
broom handles, you name it, we've had it. And the schools and the LEA couldn't understand how we could endure that and then still continue to work with the kids. It created issues, but again, we got them down to the site, showed them the results, showed them how we worked, showed them that it worked, and over time we gradually, you know, changed their perception on how it should be done to the point where we now set the standards. We're the foremost provider in the county to the county because of the way we work.
Yeah, exactly. And as you mentioned, there's one particular challenge you mentioned that I was telling them how you're going to support the mental health and well-being of those involved in this farm, and convincing the stakeholders on how this is going to completely operate. So you have got a complete idea, and this is definitely going to help the local community. But the others who are ready to invest or go ahead with it, the convincing part is something difficult. We usually come across many businesses who are trying to deliver something, but they're not able to get there because they're not able to convince the stakeholders. And and it's one of the key challenges they come across. So how did you initially come across? Was it, so as you mentioned, that you got a time frame where you have gradually proved them that this is how it works, and now you've got a substantial evidence to show. But initially, how did it work? How did you do it?
We were fortunate because our first stakeholder happened to be a family member from a local specialist academy. So she had already been to us several times, understood the way we worked, and they work with a lot of troubled boys. So we used those as a case study to build an evidence portfolio, which then allowed us to make it an easier sell. Well, we already work with students from this school. We're succeeding. Let us work with yours too, and we'll do the same. I think initially we gave it a 4-week trial period when we first started doing this sort of stuff, where we would say if you don't see a marked improvement in 4 weeks, absolutely fine. Look for services elsewhere. No one ever made it to the 4-week period without seeing progress at all. And that, again, evidence-based speaks more than any sales pitch can. Show them the proof, it works.
The environment helped as well. It's a big safe green space. It's not a classroom with 4 walls. It's not in a school. And that, the children didn't actually realize they were learning. We'd sit there laughing about it, you know, that they haven't got a clue that we're actually teaching them stuff. They were doing mathematics, they were doing English language and literature, they were doing science, and they didn't have a clue that they were doing it because they were there with a clipboard measuring out fences, doing areas. You know, they were planting crops, they were weighing out feeds and looking at nutrition and the, you know, biology of an animal, anatomy and stuff like that. And they were all doing it in the course of just mucking in and helping out, thinking they were doing animal duties. And what they didn't realize is that we were documenting all their successes while they were carrying these out. And then at the end of the week, we were showing them, it's like, well, you've managed to do maths this week. You managed to do multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. And
but they were learning without realizing they were learning.
Yeah.
And when you spoke on them that they had actually learned something, oh, okay, so you can do it, and that's it's the can do.
And then it's what can I learn now, and that's where you get them engaging. We put it on their level, we do it in a child focused way, and then it runs forward and it just gets that spark going again. But the environment did have a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and I think every child needs a different kind of care to learn the same thing. It's not everyone has got the same process to learn subtraction or addition. They have got a different approach. So interesting things that has been happening. So what was the parents' reaction when they come to know that, you know, they have seen their child transform during the course of period?
It's been really positive, hasn't it? I don't think we've had any parents that haven't been pleased that their child's actually making progress, because obviously it causes them concern. that their child can't go to school. It's also a barrier to them earning and going out to work if their child is constantly being excluded or as a school refuser and refuses to go to a mainstream school. So seeing that success, seeing that turnaround, and seeing their child as well regain that balance in their life, from going from the extreme, poor social, emotional, and mental health to actually coming back down to a level where they recognize their child again and they become the child that they knew before that episode took a grip of the child, of their son or daughter. I think that's one of the biggest things we get. A lot of surprise. It's like, we always get like this, how,
particularly with the more violent, aggressive kids. How did you stop this? How this? They don't tend to understand. You do get the occasional parent, if the child's been in this way for quite some time, you do get the parents that have gone from school to school to school and it's all failed. So they feel obligated to be in control. And it's quite difficult sometimes for us to get them to realise they just need to take a step back and let us do what we do, and it will work. And eventually when they do it, they see, and then you get the same reaction. Oh, wow, you've managed this. So yes, just our process works. Bear with it.
Yeah, I think at that particular age, they send it to school so that they will transform. But sometimes it doesn't work. They need a different learning environment, which now I think the form that is extended providing. So you mentioned about students having issues with the autism or the neurodiverse students. Were you able to transform these situations as well? Did they had any significant improvement compared to the previous and the post?
Yeah, you just have to understand how they communicate. You have to get down on their level. This is what we say. When we say child focused, there's no master plan. Yes, you've got the ideals of, what is atypical autistic spectrum condition, for example. But that doesn't translate to every child because each one's an individual. So it's just about understanding where this child is at. And it's like a state of emotional arrest, if you like, within the student, within this young person. And it's just finding a way of breaking those barriers down. And you have to go through all the behaviors. You have to go through all of their barriers, their fears, and actually gain their trust. And trust is a massive thing. You need empathy, you need understanding, and you need to get their trust. And once you've got their trust, then it just all peels away. They become just a child that you can communicate with effectively. But just that breakthrough initially, depending on the child, that's what takes the time. But that's all it takes. With anybody really, but it works in particular really, really well with those on the neurodiverse spectrum.
Yeah, and so I'm not wrong in asking that you must have a lot of schools queued up to send their students to your farm. Is it true?
We are oversubscribed to the maximum. We haven't got a waiting list yet because we're just expanding services and using offsite activities. If we were just sticking to the farm, we'd have a waiting list. Yeah. Hundreds.
Yeah, because
it's not a county-wide thing, it's a nationwide thing. We have over 700 students with that level of neurodiversity that require a specialist school placement, but there is not enough school placements for them. So the numbers slowly creeping up across the country. The pandemic's a little bit to blame for that. It's highlighted a lot of things which parents, families, caseworkers around the country have picked up on, and in particular teachers. But yeah, there's a lot of demand for a small service.
We're building a school on our farm this year. It's going to be a school for 50 students. The day after we open, it will be full.
Yeah, and do you see? Yeah, because you mentioned about you're providing a personal care to every student and customizing the way they react and they manage. So going forward, because you got a high demand, do you see that you'll be able to meet the demand with regards to providing, still able to keep the standards of the personal care, or you see you're recruiting more volunteers in your venture?
Again, no volunteers. It's all staff. We take them on. We train them. The best way I can describe it is, so with regards to expanding services and saturating things and losing the standards, we have a standard that we adhere to. It is a heavily monitored standard because it's ours. There is no way we will saturate what we deliver. It's not possible. The only way it would happen is if we were to expand like we did before and go to other sites, our ethos wouldn't follow to those sites because the staff and the people in that area wouldn't understand how we do things. That's why we wanted to concentrate. We could take on 200 students a day and we would have 200 staff that we would train in our ethos, our values, according to our methods, and we could still deliver the service and meet those standards. It's just about structuring things and scaling the management side of things to make sure that those standards are adhered to. With regards to that side of things, you can think of it like a toolbox. We've got a toolbox, and inside that toolbox are all the tools. The tools are the staff. Every staff member has a different skill set. So when the kids come in, they will pick the tools that work best for them and use them. All we'll do is we'll make the box a bit bigger and put more tools in there.
Right. I think that's brilliant. So you have no plans for even franchising out because you've got a lot of demand. No, you're not. Okay. That's brilliant. So I think the work you have been doing, it has been very helpful, I think, to the local community and particularly those children who are looking to transform their lives and learn something better. So coming to the point that we left, Shane, regarding the business venture, how you're trying to condense it to one particular unit. So what's your future plans of expansion?
So we have now negotiated with local authority to provide children's social care, so children's homes, according to the new way that children's homes are going to look in 2027, which is to create the loving, caring family units. So we are moving into social care, which is going to involve probably 10 to 15 children's homes, about another 400 staff. We are also looking into adult day services, so providing activities and places to go for adults with learning difficulties, which we're also just in the process of negotiating our way into. We've been awarded contracts for adult learning opportunities, so to take the parents of children with learning difficulties and teach them our methodology and our mechanisms to be able to function better at home with the kids, as well as teach other skills such as good health and well-being skills, maths, English. So yeah, the primary area is children, but we're also going to start moving into the adult side of things as well.
We'll be a first company nationally to actually provide wraparound services. So not only will they live and be cared for in the home environment, but they'll also have their education provided by us. And we're also looking in as well to mental health services, because nationally and specifically in our county, all those services for those types of children, they're all fragmented. And every time you hit a particular age target, like 16, 3 to 16, and then 16 to 19, 19 to 25, and then you look at care leavers, 17-year-old to 18, they're transitioning, then they're thrown into adult services for lifelong services at age 20, 19 to 20 and through to 25, and then they're off into the big wide world. So there's no cohesion across the board. So it's going to improve the outcomes both for long term by providing that wraparound service. So quite unique in its ideal, but actually something that's really needed and has been identified by central government and is being cascaded out to, regional care boards, basically, where they're looking for private businesses to work in partnership with the local authorities to take that stakeholder funding and provide better value and better longer term outcomes for children with special educational needs, moving into adulthood, and also children in care and those children that move on and leave care into adulthood.
Brilliant. I think, thank you so much. This episode has been truly inspiring and a lot of learning as well. So my last question is, what advice do you have to those aspiring students and recent graduates here at ARU who are looking to create a positive impact in their local region and register a social enterprise or start their own business?
Don't do it here, because we're already doing it. Please. No. In all seriousness, get to know your community. Know if you have something and your community needs it, then have the courage of your convictions to actually say, you know what, I'm going to do it, and plan it, work at it. Bit of humility thrown in there as well, because it always wins. If you can be the one that's actually prepared to work with everybody. We've proved this time and time again There are hundreds of organisations in our community here in, the West Sussex area who do some amazing work, but none of them do what we do, and we don't do what they can do. So it's about that partnership, engagement, and about meeting those gaps and just developing it and growing it. That would be the advice I give them.
That's yours. The best advice I was ever given in business is it's never what you know, it's who you know. The most important thing, and we've seen it, is know everyone. If they are relevant to what you are doing, find a way, come hell or high water, to introduce yourself, sell your idea to them, tell them what you're doing, know them all, whether it's the licensing authority, whether it's the health authority, it doesn't matter who it is. Know everyone who operates anywhere near or within the boundaries of what you're planning to set up, because it will help you no end.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.